Welcome back to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James, Scully, and Vance Hanson to look back at a number of Kentucky Derby and Oaks prep races from the weekend, which included a number of upsets. Vance, one of those upsets occurred in the Southwest at Oaklawn on Saturday, where Mystik Dan, an 11-1 long shot, won by 8 lengths. What do you make of his win?
Well, it was definitely the most compelling performance of the weekend, aside from Nysos's and the Robert B. Lewis at Santa Anita. Uh, it seemed like Kenny McPeek and Brian Hernandez were preparing Mystik Dan in advance of the Southwest to get him to rate better and to settle more off the pace and show a little bit more, a little less speed than he had in his first 4 starts. And that work ahead of time paid off in spades. Obviously, he broke sharp. He relaxed into a ground-saving position and had tons in reserve when he was called upon in the upper stretch, and he just blew the doors off of that field. Now, obviously, the main question is how much did the off-going affect that performance and the performance of his opponents? Uh, Obviously, we want to see something similar to that or close to it on a fast track. It seems like Mystik Dan is going to sit out the Rebel in a few weeks and then just point to the Arkansas Derby. So I think the Arkansas Derby is going to tell us a lot more about Mystik Dan's Derby prospects than the Southwest did, James.
Yes, I mean, Mystik Dan was visually impressive, no doubt about it, but that performance came out of nowhere over a muddy track. So that naturally makes me want to see him back it up before I'd ever buy stock per se in his chances. He was coming off a pair of weakening 5th place efforts, didn't run well in the Smarty Jones, and Vance referenced it. He broke sharp like in his previous 5 starts where he was up there battling either on or real close to the lead. But Brian Hernandez took him back. He got him to the rail in mid-pack going into that first turn. And yeah, I just love the way he cut the corner into the stretch. I saw other people say, hey, it looked like Mine That Bird. And I thought that was sort of like an interesting comparison because it just came out of nowhere. I will point out that since in the last decade, Essential Quality in 2021 is the only Southwest winner to come back and win his next start. I hope Mystik Dan gets fast conditions in the Arkansas Derby because I want to see if he can run anywhere close to that on a fast track next time. But the race did come back fast, so he has that going for him, Ashley.
I'm a little skeptical as well. He had only won previously at 5.5 furlongs. It was by more than 7 lengths at Churchill, but those 2 5th-place finishes have me a little shocked by this 8-length win coming out and racing on the mud. Makes you wonder if that variable helped him there. And there were a lot of stakes winners and graded stakes placed runners in this field that a lot of us, I think, were looking at instead. We had that lukewarm morning line favorite in Maycox Bay who scratched. So I have to wait and see as well on a fast track what happens here. And he's by Golden Sense, who I think ran his best races at 1 mile to 1.1 mile, a 2-time Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner. So pedigree-wise, I'm not sure either if classic distances are really in his pedigree, and going to wait to see what happens on that fast track. Well, the biggest upset of the weekend was Fierceness, a 1-5 post-time choice, finishing 3rd in the Holy Bull to Hades, who's still unbeaten after winning that race. What are we supposed to think about Fierceness now? How do we view him? James?
Well, I didn't take a favorable view of Fierceness off of his performance. To me, horses who fail to fire when everything doesn't go right lack a certain fortitude. And right now, Fierceness is clearly that. When he didn't break smoothly in the Champagne and in the Holy Bull Stakes, he just doesn't run at all. He's out of gas by the top of the stretch. So he needs to get tougher mentally. And I just don't know, as far as the Derby goes, he'll probably only have 1 more prep. Todd Pletcher doesn't like to run these horses 3 times at 3 before the Derby. So he's only going to get 1 more start to rebound off of that. And considering it's a 20-horse starting gate at Churchill Downs, that Holy Bull left me with some serious doubts surrounding Fierceness, fans.
Well, my biggest takeaway from Fierceness's loss in the Holy Bull is that these trainers need to stop running their juvenile champions in the Holy Bull. Fierceness is the 4th one in the last dozen years to lose this race. So we had Hanson before that, Shanghai Bobby, who was also a Pletcher trainee, Classic Empire got beat badly in the Holy Bull, and now Fierceness. Some of us of a certain vintage remember when the 3-race Derby Prep Series at Gulfstream started with the 7 furlong Hutchison Stakes, and maybe a sprint like that would probably be a better fit for a horse like Fierceness, who obviously needs to break better. That would probably be a bit more suitable prep to start the year than a 1:16 Holy Bull. But off on my tangent there, Fierceness, I echo a lot of what James said. Slow start in the early trouble are factors in the loss, but he was still capable of coming out on top in this race. Despite the slow pace, he was right there next to Hades, 3 wide position, poked his head in front around the far turn, but then he just came up totally empty. And the inconsistency he's displayed so far through 4 starts has diminished his Derby prospects in my eyes, Ashley.
Yeah, and trainer Todd Pletcher said it was a pretty rough start, kind of similar to what happened in the Champagne. If he doesn't get away well, he doesn't get into the flow of the race the same way. And it's kind of reminding me of Tappet Trice from last year. He just continued to break poorly. And Fierceness at least has, 2 wins where when he does win, it's in dominant fashion. But, now we've seen him twice have poor starts. And that just leaves you wondering, what are you going to get if he does make it to the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby, or if he does race in that. I'm assuming he'll make it to the starting gate, but if he is in fact going to run in the Kentucky Derby, we don't know what we're going to get out of the starting gate. But if you listen to Jason Beam's podcast on Monday, he talks about one positive here. With Fierceness showing this inconsistency, you can probably get longer prices on him going forward. And we saw that with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was 16-1. And Vance, I think you correctly still stood by him and got that win at 16-1.
Yeah, I did. I was fortunate to catch him on his best day and the best price that we'll probably ever get on him, actually.
Yeah. Well, congrats on that win. I certainly wish I had stuck with him, but I wrote him off after the Champagne. So we'll see what happens going forward, but certainly have to exercise caution with him going forward. Well, there were 2 other Kentucky Derby preps this weekend, plus 2 Oaks preps. So what were your takeaways from the Derby and Oaks prep action, Vance?
Well, Nisos indeed looked like something very special in the Lewis at Santa Anita, and his performance speaks for itself. And as everybody knows, he's not eligible to compete in the Kentucky Derby this year, and so his connections have undoubtedly circled the Preakness for him, and will work their way backwards from there. And there might not be too many, Kentucky Derby runners willing to run back in the Preakness against him, possibly, depending on how well he does in his next start or 2. I found the Withers result kind of on par with the Holy Bull. The winners earned kind of similar Brisnet speed ratings, but the efforts themselves were kind of less than eye-catching and slower than what we saw in the Southwest and Lewis. So I'm not too keen on Uncle Heavy's performance in the Withers because of that, and pretty much everybody else behind him, James.
Yeah, I mean, Nisos, like you said, Vance, he won't run in the Kentucky Derby, but he made quite the impression in the Robert B. Lewis. That was his first start at 2 turns, a mile on the 16th race. So, obviously he passed that test with flying colors. The other race, the other Derby qualifier, the Withers Stakes at Aqueduct. I got to give credit to El Grand O. I mean, to me, the runner-ups in both the Southwest, Just Steel, and in the Withers, El Grand O, are a pair of talented sprint middle distance types that aren't going to fare well at longer distances this spring. They may continue on the Derby path for the time being, but they both ran their eyeballs out to be second. That was a tough beat for El Grando. He did 9 furlong distance, just got him, and that allowed Uncle Heavy, who looked beat in upper stretch, just to wear him down late. He did rally better than Lightline. They were basically next to each other in the upper stretch. We both looked like they were struggling at that point. So I give Uncle Heavy credit for getting up, but I'm a little bit dubious that he can come back and replicate that performance against steeper competition, Ashley.
As far as the Oaks prep action, we had R. Harper Rose, about a 2-1 choice at post time, when the forward gal by 2 lengths against 6 rivals. And then we had an upset in another Oaks Prep Gold, a 24-1 upset winner of the Martha Washington, now 2 for 3, but was a distant fifth to Alpine Princess in the Untappable Stakes. There were a lot of upsets this weekend. I don't know why it just turned out that way, where there were so many upset winners. And to me, that made Nyso's performance stand out even more. I know, a little controversial because he can't race in the Derby, which is a little unfortunate because I do think he might be right now the best 3-year-old in the country. He's consistently posted triple-digit speed figures in all 3 starts, and he has won by open lengths in all 3 starts. And you've seen these other runners like Fierceness, Nash, Timberlake win by huge lengths and then come back and fail in their next start. So to see a horse like Nysos be able to keep stringing together wins, he's really the only horse I see doing that right now. But unfortunately, we have to wait until probably the Preakness to see just how good this horse is.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a fair
you?
point. And that Band of Gold, I thought her race in the Martha Washington, that just really burst the bubble for Denim Pearl. She looks like such a talented filly for Brad Cox, but I don't think she's a 2-turn type yet. So that was a tough beat for her because she had to lead a deep stretch and sort of came up empty late.
Well, I'm curious, Vance and James, do you, especially with Fierceness losing this weekend, do you feel like there is a surefire top 3-year-old right now? Would Nysos be that for you? Or do you think there's another horse that's top 3-year-old at the moment? Vance?
Well, I mean, Nysos would be in the mix, but, you know, I saw Locked, you know, win the Breeders' Futurity last year, and I thought the flow of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile worked against him, but he offered a really nice run to be third in that spot. So he's got all this, like, class and looks like a type who's just going to relish longer distances. That was Nysos' first start at 2 turns. He went a mile and a 16th distance, and I'm not counting anything out for him. But, you know, I would say a horse like Glock just because of his juvenile class. Now, he obviously was going to run this Saturday, and he's going to miss the Sam F. Davis due to a fever, so we'll see when he gets back. But you're right. I mean, in terms of excitement, there's not much more exciting out there in the 3-year-old ranks.
What do you think, Vance?
Yeah, I mean, Nysos, just based on if you're a speed figures guy like I am, and most people are, I mean, Nysos kind of stands out so far after going 3 for 3. But, you know, a lot of these 3-year-olds just aren't going to run against each other until we get to the classics. And so that's when everybody's chips are on the table. And that's kind of when we're going to find out who's best or who has the best day, as far as who the top 3-year-old is right now. And it's, as outside of Nysos, we're just going to have to see what's coming up in the next few weeks. Of course, we've got an excellent edition of the Risen Star coming up where we're going to have 4 or 5 top contenders. And Ashley, you will be on site for that showdown. So it'll be exciting to see how those horses do in the Risen Star and see if anybody emerges as a potential contender against Nysos for being the top 3-year-old.
Well, we've got more Derby and Oaks prep action this weekend, and we'll be back next Tuesday to recap those races, and check us out on Thursday as well for our best bets and fades on the TwinSpires jury. We'll see you next time.